All right. Welcome to the People Playbook podcast. And today's guest, we have Jeremy Harvey with us today. Jeremy is a seasoned strategist, a marketing expert, a leadership coach, and hails from Oxford to hold such global roles at Unilever and Reckitt and Coleman. Jeremy's journey spans continents and industries. He's now an operating partner at Red Swan Partners and a Tech Canada chair, helping leaders unlock growth and navigate complex business challenges. Jeremy believes we only succeed when we all succeed, and that philosophy guides everything he does. With that introduction, Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're excited to have you here. I've seen many of your stuff on LinkedIn, and obviously we know some of the same people and whatnot, so I wanted to get you on the podcast. And let's talk about Oxford. So a famous educational center. And how did your time at Oxford and studying history shape the way you lead and coach today?
Well, it was a long time ago. I left there in 1979, but I think there's probably two ways. Oxford itself surprisingly taught me the value of diversity. And that's a bit weird because I was in a single-sex college. But the collegiate system meant that I was surrounded by 100 people from all different backgrounds, studying different subjects, all of whom had their own take on everything. You know, some of them turned into actually renowned sportsmen. Some of them turned into ministers of the government. But it was incredibly stimulating. And the thing I learned that there is so much power for having the same issues talked about by different people from different perspectives. Really, really valuable. History itself, and when in history you're trying to determine, why did things happen? Who did what? Why did they do those things? So you've got to sort of weed out those relevant facts. You've got to judge what's significant. And you develop an argument from those facts. And you think about it, that's not much different from a strategy. You're trying to determine the important things about a marketplace. You're trying to determine why your consumers or customers do what they do. And you're coming up with a strategy and a plan.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing when you speak about diversity and we just talk about different people, different cultures. We actually make better decisions, right? Because the way you think about something may be different than the way I think about something. And I love it when we get a whole bunch of people in a room and we're able to discuss things, because getting people's different perspectives actually get us to a better outcome. So Jeremy, you've worked across Europe, you've worked across North America and the Middle East. So if you can pinpoint what the biggest leadership challenge that you've seen that's common with all those different geographies, what would you say that would be?
That's quite a hard one because, a lot of the challenges across businesses and across geographies are similar. But if I had to pick one, I think I would say leaders have problems learning to trust other people, learning to trust their own staff, learning to trust their employees. And they have trouble establishing the criteria that they need to be met for that trust to be earned. And the value of that trust really is it can become a virtuous spiral. If a leader trusts an employee, you can delegate more to that employee, which frees up more time for the leader to do more far-reaching, impactful things. The converse is true. If you don't trust people, you end up doing their job for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Why do you think that barrier is? Why do you think leaders have such a hard time giving up trust?
I think it stems from a couple of things. I think the first one is leaders quite often, they go through a stage of believing that they are the only ones who can do whatever the task is to its fullest. So they think that, they can do it first. They don't trust people to do it exactly the way they would have done it. And it does take a time for people to realize that actually if someone's doing it 80% or 90% of the way that a leader would do it, that's good enough.
Yeah. Absolutely. We can figure out the other 20% along the way if we need to, right? Yeah. Jeremy, you've, you were in corporate, you were with Unilever, and then you jumped and founded your own consultancy business. What made that leap and what made you do that?
It's a good question. It was actually, I left, it was Reckitt and Coleman I left to join a consultancy, but it was more jumping off a cliff actually than a leap.
Yeah.
To be absolutely candid, it was a youthful fit of pique. I wanted a job in Europe. Britain was going to be in the heart of Europe. Didn't quite last as long as I thought. I wanted a job in France. And in 6 months they said, yep, that will be yours. In 6 months and 1 day, literally, it wasn't mine, and I resigned that day.
Wow. So
never regretted it either. Never regretted it. Regretted it a wee bit at the time, but never since.
Wow, that's amazing. So, if you look at starting your own consultancy and then obviously branching off and becoming a tech chair in Canada, what would be the biggest thing that you see within leaders that you coach within Tech Canada?
I think the biggest thing that I see is, and this sounds perverse really, it's how much I can learn from them. It's kind of how little that I know and how much that they can help me. And it's not a one-way street. I learn as much from mentoring and coaching and consulting with people and probably more than they ever learn from me.
That's very interesting that you say that, because that's very transparent what you just said there, right? Because a lot of times when we're in a chair position or a consultant position, we think that we have to know it all. And I love the fact that you just were very vulnerable there and you just said, no, you don't have to know it all. And actually, I'm learning from them along the way. So that's pretty powerful.
And it's a release not having to know it all.
Yeah, for sure. And it's okay to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's okay to say that, which, is a perfect segue into another question I wanted to talk to you about, the businesses that you've grown and scaled to, some of them over 50 million, right? So what's the one overlooked factor that drives sustainable growth, in your opinion?
Well, for me, I mean, again, there's so many factors, but for me, I mean, we all know about momentum and the importance of momentum, and we, got to keep it going. But I think the factor that's linked to that is that momentum in scaling a business can come from absolutely anywhere. It's not just the leadership. I mean, if your team and your employees buy into your vision and you can explain and you can demonstrate their part in making that vision come true, then almost anything that they do, if they're buying into it all, anything they do will keep that momentum going.
And how do you think they buy into that momentum?
You have to communicate your vision with enthusiasm, belief, and passion. And in a way which, not in a way you want to say it, but in a way that they want to hear it.
I agree with you. I often talk about this a lot with my clients, and Pinball Clemens actually once said to me, and it stuck with me, he said, belief fuels passion and passion rarely fails.
Yeah.
So if that momentum's not happening, it's probably because they don't believe what you've actually said to them along the way, or they find that they're just not buying in. Right? So it stuck with me because if you have belief, that's going to fuel the passion. And passion, it's amazing what we can do when we're passionate about something.
It is. And sometimes it's not just belief. Sometimes it's they just don't understand. And it's a communication problem from the person who's trying to get it across. It's not the problem of the people not believing. It's a problem of the person not really communicating and portraying his passion and his belief in whatever the task is.
Yeah, and I believe communication and trust are the two pillars for any business, right? So when you have both those kind of rowing together, all of a sudden you can create that momentum and that belief and that passion to get to where you need to go. If I had to talk about your mantra, I like to say it's on your LinkedIn profile, we only succeed when we all succeed. What does that mean to you? And how do you set your everyday life to make sure that actually happens?
It's a good question, and I hate that word mantra because it makes it sound like it's just a bunch of words, and it's not. We are all groups of individuals. I mean, we are all individuals, but we're groups of individuals in a larger community. In the peer groups that I run, I mean, we share each other's pain, we share our joys, we share our successes, we share our failures, and it doesn't matter whether they're business or personal. But my mantra, if you want to call it that, I think could be rewritten to make it clearer, although I'm not going to. And what I would say is we only succeed when our community succeeds. And then the fundamental question then is how does a community become more important or as important as the individuals within that community?
Wow. How do you foster that kind of communication when you're leading a room full of type A, go-get-it leaders along the way that they're so driven in their own success? How do you foster that communication so they actually start believing it and they see it?
Well, it starts really from the selection of the people that you have in that sort of group. And because the people you want in a group like that are people who want to listen to other people, who want to support other people, and who are only there for the reason of being supported and supporting others. And as long as we celebrate, and we do, as long as we celebrate people's successes and we support people's problems, then it really does become a community. And the important thing is to celebrate every success. If you celebrate an individual success, it becomes a success for the whole of our community.
So powerful. Yeah. If I go a little deeper on that, how would you help leaders balance strategy with the emotional side of the business? Because you talk about business, you talk about business things with your groups, you talk about personal issues, winnings, failures along the way, right? And you talked about, that's why I brought up that emotional side of the business, right? Because sometimes it's lonely at the top and they just need to vent and whatnot. So how do you help leaders balance that and get to move forward a little more?
Well, you've struck a nerve, Jason, because I really hate that word balance. I've never liked that word balance. I mean, because balance kind of assumes that there is some sort of equilibrium we should be striving for. And I don't believe that to be true. Being off balance creates movement, while balance itself is much more static. So having got that hobby horse out of the way, I think the important thing is to help people and demonstrate to them, the value of the combination of strategy and the emotional side. I mean, just thinking about it, I mean, strategy is about sort of analyzing trends, visioning, problem solving, decision making. The emotional side, if you like, is, let's think of a few, being self-aware, and about your own emotions and the impact they have on others, controlling your emotions, having empathy, and then all those social skills to sort of build healthy relationships. And if you can show the value of combining those things, it's not an either or, it's a both and, then, some of the benefits, and I'll just go through a couple that come to my mind. I mean, we mentioned it before. One of them is enhanced decision making. Mm-hmm. If you're tying in the, strategic thinking, the logical side, with a sort of high emotional awareness, high emotional intelligence, if you want to call it that, you actually end up with decisions which are more sustainable and more accepted. And they're better decisions. And so these things are all a combination. They're not an either or. And I'm going to use that word balance again, even though I said I don't like it. If you can balance or you can combine sort of all those logical thinking, the logical solutions with an empathetic understanding, both of yourself and of the people working for you, then you're going to end up with, as I said, enhanced decision making, probably improved communication, probably more adaptive. You'll be able to pivot this way or that because you can explain, to yourself what changes are needed, and you can explain to others why those changes are important.
Wow. This is a little off center, but I want to ask you this question. Just if you had a chance to invite one historical figure that you'd like to invite to your tech peer session, who would that be and why? I want to know the why of that person as well.
You're doing that just because I said I was a historian. That's not fair.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah, of course.
It's funny though, I've actually been asked that question before, and my answer changes. It's almost always someone from the Renaissance. But, my criteria when I think about it is I'm really interested in people who've helped others see things differently, who've changed the paradigm. And that's what I try and do in my peer groups. So who would I pick? I think today, and it will be different tomorrow, today I'm going to pick Galileo Galilei.
Okay.
And why? I mean, we all know he promoted the thought that the Earth orbited the Sun. We all know that he observed through a telescope to sort of provide data for that. Although actually the theory wasn't his and his telescope wasn't his invention. But he was the person who did most to publicize it. And when you think how he changed the paradigm, the astronomy side, which is actually relatively easy. He changed the paradigm in shifting people in the place that human beings had in the world. I mean, they weren't central as they were in the old system. They were much more part of it. Changed the relationship between the religious and the secular society. On all of those things. But what I would love to talk to him about is why did he take the risk to make all this public? Because he was excommunicated, he was put under house arrest for 15 years. His family and he were threatened. What was the driving force that made him want to get this truth to a wider group of people?
Wow. I was not expecting that guest.
He's on the old side of old, but I love Renaissance thinkers had such an important part in the way that Western society has developed. And it's full of them. You could pick many. You could pick Newton, sure. Montesquieu, anybody at all. They're great.
Jeremy, I always ask some kind of a question to end these off. And the one I've picked for you is because of your diverse experience globally and just how long you've been at this. I think that's amazing. And I just want to ask you, after 3 decades, in business, what keeps you still curious and motivated every day?
Jason, thank you for the 3 decades. I mean,
I'm trying to be nice here, Jeremy.
I know it's nice. Either I look younger than I am, or you can't do your maths. But
Yeah.
my first job was actually in 1979, so I'm approaching 5 decades. And I mean, what keeps me curious and motivated? I mean, I've touched on it already by saying that there's so much I can learn from other people. You know, there is so much to learn. There is so much more to be experienced. I mean, every day I might learn X and then realize I've still got 2X to learn. It's never going to stop. I mean, how could you not be curious about all those personal unknowns and all those experiences yet to have?
Yeah.
And why is that motivating? It's motivating. It's motivating because I'm running out of time. I mean, I've been in 50 years in business, and the next 50 years will probably make me an outlier in terms of the length of time I spend there.
You'll be AI.
I will be at AI, but so it's motivating to do as much as I can, as efficiently as I can, and as enjoyably as I can. Honestly, I think I'm just really, really lucky to be being born curious.
Yeah. I said that was my last question, but it just brings me to another one. Have you been curious all your life?
Have I been curious all my life? No. That's a very good question. When I was younger, in my 30s, I mean, when I was working for the Unilevers and Reckitt and Coleman's, I was pretty sure that I knew most things that were important. So I was probably a little bit arrogant, a little bit overconfident, didn't know what I didn't know. And then, as life goes on, you have your life lessons, you make more mistakes, some of which, hopefully not too many, I repeated. And the realization hits you that there's a lot you don't know. And that makes you curious to actually find out those things and really concentrate on the ones that are relevant to you.
I admire your approach, and I love that after all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decades of leadership, Jeremy, that you are still curious and you don't come across as knowing it all. And a lot of times when I speak to leaders with that vast experience and that tenure in leadership, they think they've seen it all. I love it when you earlier you said you haven't seen it all, right? And that's admirable. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on the podcast today. People, they need to hear your voice, and we're going to share that. And thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed, as I knew I would, every moment of it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy.